All right. Week 3 is in the books. Let's take a quick look back at the week that was. Game of the week goes to the Super Simon Loose Cannon Shootout. The two teams combined for nearly 270 points in this matchup, with Simon coming out on top 141 to 127. Simon placed 4 players in double digits, 3 of those players topping 30 points. Austin Collie led the way with 35 points on 171 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Simon's other receiver had his big breakout game as a Raven. That was Anquan Bolden. Bolden had 142 yards receiving with 3 touchdowns for 34 points. And of course, Peyton Manning tossing to Collie and some of his other receivers, Blair White, for 325 yards and 3 touchdowns. Manning in 3 games, just over 1,000 yards passing, 9 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, which is nice. The Cannons answered with 5 in double digits, including another big game from Mike Vick. Vick scored 38 points on over 300 total offensive yards with 4 touchdowns, 3 in the air and 1 rushing. Some of that passing went to Cannons' Deshaun Jackson. He had 153 yards receiving, including a 61-yard touchdown grab, and that was 27 points for Jackson. Said Ben added 20. Both teams are now 1 and 2 in the Quagmire division, and 3rd and 4th in total points scored. More on that in a minute. The other game featuring 2 teams going over the 100-point mark was the Pitons and the Rockers. The Pitons topped the previously undefeated Rockers, 115 to 109. Both teams placing 5 players in double digits in this one. Breeze led the way for the winning team, putting 30 on the board with 365 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. Breeze also had 2 interceptions in that contest. Macklin, another receiver benefiting from Mike Vick's big day, had 83 yards through the air but 2 touchdowns. That was good enough to score 20 points for him. Antonio Gates had 18, going over 100 yards receiving and a touchdown. For the Rockers, Romo led scoring with 23 on 284 yards through the air and 2 touchdowns. A couple of big free agent acquisitions for the Rockers again this week. The Eagles D came up big with 22. And then going into Monday night, the Rockers needing 18 points from their free agent acquisition, Greg Olsen, the tight end in Chicago. I got close, got 12 on 64 yards receiving and a single touchdown. So that Quagmire division off to a very strong start this year. After 3 games, we have 3 of the top 4 scorers and actually 4 of the top 6, as well as 4 of the top 6 in power rankings. That Quagmire division. One of the teams scored 100 points this past week, and that was T-Dub. The X-Rays blew out Mastakilla 136 to 67. 5 in double digits for T-Dub, including Rivers 34 points on 455 yards passing, 2 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion. Don't want to leave that out. Brandon Marshall had 28 points on 166 receiving yards and a TD. Chris Johnson had 26 on 125 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Mastakilla had 3 in double digits, led by Mendenhall's 22 on 143 yards passing and a single touchdown. Through those first 3 games, you'll see kind of a common denominator. Lots of 100-yard receivers, very few 100-yard rushers. I heard a stat on the radio today saying that passing yards, the ratio to rushing yards, 2 to 1. And this week bears it out. If you look at our starting lineups, we had 4 100-yard rushers: Turner, Mendenhall, Peterson, and Chris Johnson. There were 9 100-yard receivers, including a couple of tight ends. And these are guys named Lewis Murphy and Collie and a 65-year-old Santana Moss. If you go a little bit deeper, you go into the benches, 2 more rushers reached that 100-yard mark. Peyton Hillis and Run DMC. But we added 4 more receivers. And yes, one of those receiving 100 yards was a running back, but they're still passing yards. So that totals out at, 13 players with over 100 yards rushing to only 6. 13 players with 100 yards receiving to only 6 with 100 yards rushing. Big passing, big receiving NFL league is what it is. One other game I thought was going to reach 100 points, but did not, was the Pilot Lights versus Monkeys. This ended up as a 95-94 win for the Lights. But it's really not as close as the score would lead you to believe. The Dolphins D really let the Lights down on Sunday night, giving up 31 points and just over 400 yards to the Jets. And the Pilot Lights watched that 20 points turn into a big fat 0 by the end of the game. The Lights did have 5 in double digits, led by Tom Brady on 252 and 3 touchdowns. Dustin Keller of said Jets scored 21 on 98 yards and 2 touchdowns. Always a bad combination when you got one of the studs from the other team going against your own defense. Kind of shooting yourself in the foot there. The Monkeys placed only 2 in double digits this week. Remember, he had 3 in a win last week, riding over 46 points from Javid Best. This week he gets 37 from AP on 190 total yards and 2 touchdowns, including an 80-yard touchdown scamper. And his homeboy Flacco, after scoring 5 points in week 1 and 4 points in week 2, finally comes through with a big game and drops 28 points on 262 yards and 3 touchdowns. All of those to Bolden, as we mentioned a little earlier. Another incredibly close game saw the Headbangers and the Chili Dogs battle it out, 82-80 win for the Headbangers. Sheboygan placed 3 in double digits, including 23 from Matt Ryan and 20 from the Steelers D, head and shoulders above the rest since the return of Palomalu. The Dogs actually had more in double digits with 4, but 3 of the 4 combined for only 4 points above that magic number. Tony Gonzalez led the Dogs with 19 on 110 yards receiving and a touchdown. New York Steve Smith had 12, Steve Jackson had 11, and the other Matt Schaub had 11 as well. So by default, the Dog of the Week goes to Man Bunga Hole versus Cats with Guns. This is a contest in which the Knights of the Manbunga Hole were victorious over the Cats, 83-57. 3 in double digits for MBN, sounds like a bank or something, I think it is. Led by Rogers with 26, the aforementioned Santana Moss's 18. The Cats, who may be considering a change back to the Pussies with Squirt Gun moniker, placed 2 in double digits. Michael Turner had 20 and Jay Cutler had 15. We can say this virtually every week about every single game, some way or another. But a few key moves for the Cats, and we're looking at a completely different game. The Bears D outscored the Giants D by 13. Moore from New Orleans outscored Austin by 26. And tight end Boss over Shanko by 8. A difference of 47 points. The Cats are well over 100 points. And looking down on MBN. So, Pick'em. Moving on to the Pick'em. We got some pool updates. Man Bunga put his third 4-win week in a row together. And he leads with 12 points. Pilot Lights bounces back after a 2-win week in week 2 to get 5 right this week. They're in second place with 11. And the Rockers and the Monkeys are tied at third place with 9 points. Survivor, we have lost another one. Ellick falls with the Redskins as they lose to St. Louis. 3 of us jumped on New England, and Mike went homer when he picked the Ravens. We'll all take the W's, but those games, I think, turned out to be a lot closer than any of us anticipated. So, what do we got coming up? We got a couple of 2-1 teams taking the field. We got Sheboygan Headbangers taking on the Rockers, and the Pitons taking on Manbunga Knights. So those are a couple of good games. In the annual White Bowl, we got the 0-3 Dogs trying to get into the win column as they take on the 2-1 Pilot Lights. So as of week 3, we have no undefeated teams left, but we have 7 teams at 2-1, 4 at 1-2, and then the Dogs waiting to get that first win. Let's see. Oh, hey, other big news. After 3 weeks plus of free agency, the Monkeys have finally made a move. They've moved Reggie Bush to the injury report and picked up Joshua Cribbs. Way to go, Monks. Nice to see that your computer's working, even though I heard you had some laptop difficulty. So, speaking of injuries, let's run this down real quick so you know that I'm paying attention. Manbunga Knights, you need to get the other Bush back onto the playing field. We got Michael Bush in Oakland. You sat him out weeks 1, week 2. He was back in week 3, but still needed to sit out his 3rd week. He's back on the active roster for Oakland Raiders. You need to get him back in your lineup and make some space for him by jettisoning someone else. My other 2 guys, which is Rice and Schillen, they're still okay. Both of those guys still out. And then, of course, we just talked about Reggie Bush getting moved to the injury report on the Monkeys. Other than that, we don't have anyone else on the injury report. So, that does it for my Week 3 in review. We got a big Week 4 coming up. Again, this is, I can't even tell you, this is such a strong league. All these games close. I think looking at the previews for last week, I think 5 out of the 6 games, the line was within 5 points. So all the matchups are all really good and strong. So looking forward to a great Week 4. We'll catch you guys. I got to work this weekend. I've been off the first 3 weekends enjoying my Red Zone channel. But I got to go to work this weekend. So we'll try and catch some of the games at work. And we'll catch up with you guys later on.